Michael Cohen back on the stand, day 2, cross-examined by Todd Blanche, Trump's defense attorney. And many people are saying this is not Michael Cohen's finest day. Some people saying he collapsed, his legs have been cut out from under him. This testimony was devastating to the Bragg case because we know he's a liar and he's got no credibility at all. But they want to get Trump so badly, they really had no other choice other than to find somebody who will make up some crimes since Trump doesn't commit them. So we'll go into the testimony, hear from Trump, and pay close attention to this extortion word that has come out. We'll see where that comes into fray here. But courtesy of our friend Matthew Russell Lee, Inner City Press reporting, Trump is inside the courtroom here, blue suit, red tie, power tie. He's talking to Todd Blanche on his right. Pool photos are taken, so we get some new photographs, which they were banned for a while. I don't know if that's new or not. But there's a little bit of a kerfuffle. All the photographers like vultures coming in. They leave. It's time to begin. Door burst open. All rise. Judge walks in. Judge Mercom. Clerk of the court says, this is the time set for the people of the state of New York versus Donald J. Trump. Appearances, please. Both parties announced. Good morning, Your Honor. Here on behalf of the government. Good morning, Your Honor. Here on behalf of the President Trump. Judge says, all right, good morning, everybody. Before we begin, do we have any updates on scheduling that we need to attend to? Todd Blanche, Trump's defense attorney. Your Honor, we actually do, yeah. But may we approach and have this conversation up there? And so there's a sidebar. They go up to the bench, but Beauvais for Trump's defense goes up. Susan Nicholas remains back at the defense table. Beauvais's empty seat is away from Trump. Susan Nicholas and Trump are not talking, and Emile Beauvais are at the bench. Now, Inner City Press says, golly, this is a long sidebar. All right, we are waiting for something to get started this morning. They're still up there. Trump's lawyer, Emile Beauvais, appearing to check his calendar. They're looking through their phones, scheduling dates. Judge Mercon stands up. He's crossing his arm. He's like, what about your Thursdays? How about your Thursday? Well, how come? Can you move that? No, I can't really move that, Your Honor. It's my mother-in-law. I mean, she'll kill me if I move it. He's like, all right, it's your mother-in-law. Okay, I get that. All right, how about you? So they're moving stuff for him. So what are they doing? Nobody really knows. Inner City Press says during this ever longer sidebar, they're still up there like, there's nothing to do. He's like looking around the courtroom and he says there's a water bottle on the witness stand. Looks like it's been there for a while. Maybe it was prepositioned for Michael Cohen in case he gets parched. Or maybe it was left there since Tuesday. No one knows. But the sidebar's finally over. Good Lord. Defense lawyers now return to the defense table, huddled around Trump. Judge Mercon says, to the press and everybody else in the courtroom, he's like, hello. He says, okay, I apologize that took so long. Gosh. No explanations given. And they say, we're ready to begin. Bring in the witness. Okay, fine. Hopefully you got it all figured out. Michael Cohen comes in. Reminder, Mr. Cohen, says the judge, you are still under oath. He's like, I don't care. What are you talking about? What's an oath? An oath of what? Like tell the truth? I don't even know what you're talking about, but whatever, I'm here. Judge says, please get the jury. Cohen takes out a new bottle of water and he put the other on the floor. So Cohen takes the first bottle. He's like, what is this? Then he takes that out and then he pulls his other one out. He's like, oh, perfect. I'll put that right there in case he gets parched. So the judge says, all right, jurors, sorry to keep you waiting out there. We had to take care of some business this morning, but our schedule's a little bit broken up here. So we have to change some things around. So make some notes of this, please. Says we may need to work next Wednesday if you can make it. And jurors were nodding. Okay, sounds good. Coming back on Wednesday, even though we've had Wednesdays off this entire time. Don't know what that's about, but that's the story. Judge says, Mr. Blanche, over to you. Trump's defense attorney, Todd Blanche, stands up, looking great, sharp today. He turns over to Michael Cohen, who's back on the stand. He says, Mr. Cohen, I want to start today with this question. Can you tell me who is Detective Jeremy Rosenberg? Cohen says, well, he works in the DA's office with Alvin Bragg. He says, well, I want you to look at this document, Mr. Cohen. You recognize these? He says, yeah. You'd agree these are your texts with Detective Rosenberg, wouldn't you? He says, yeah. Prosecutor jumps up. May we approach, Your Honor, getting into these text messages? They walk up. Another sidebar with the judge. They're having another private conversation. Trump's defense says, all right, we can take that down. Let's go ahead and put up a redacted version of 845. Okay, they something on the screen. We don't want the phone numbers out there or something. Take it down. Okay, fine, we'll redact it. All right, put up redacted 845. Are these your text messages? The judge says, only for his private viewing. Finally, Mr. Cohen, are these the texts between you and Detective Rosenberg, who works for the DA? Yeah, they are. Are they accurate? Yeah, they look to be accurate. Your Honor, we introduce Exhibit B45, defense exhibit. Objection, Your Honor, we object. Judge says, sidebar, come on up here. Prosecutor comes up, starts whining about this. Your Honor, this is a part of the government's investigation, and this is sources and methods, and we can't have this possibly disclosed to everybody, and so we don't want this coming in evidence because it's a work product doctrine and all this. The judge says, okay, but your objection is sustained. That exhibit is not coming in. Please proceed. Perfect. Trump gets more evidence not admitted. Great. Todd Blanche says, oh, great. Thanks, Judge. The documents are not coming in. He says, they were around when you testified to the grand jury. Is that right, Mr. Cohen? You know about these texts? He says, yeah. And you remember, Mr. Cohen, when the fact that President Trump had been indicted was leaked to the press. Objection! Your Honor, we object to the word leak. We didn't leak anything. He says, rephrase. Okay, they say, fine. Okay, we'll rephrase it. You remember when the fact that President Trump had been indicted was made public through non-official means, don't you? Thanks. So you knew that the public, and you learned about this. did Detective Rosenberg tell you that, quote, it's done? Did the detective tell you it's, quote, done? It's done? Cohen says, well, the detective pointed me to a newspaper article. He sent me to an article and I read it, so what? Well, isn't it true, Michael, that he wrote you, he said, I know you heard. Nice heads up, huh? Telling the New York Times before you. Do you remember when the detective said that to you? Saying, really nice that you got a heads up and nobody knew about this. They told the New York Times before you. In other words, the indictment got leaked before you even knew about it. Cohen, all of a sudden, I don't remember. And we saw this last time when he was on the stand. Suddenly he remembers everything. He's like, oh no, I know exactly what Trump told me exactly here. But when the defense asks him a question, all of a sudden his brain evaporates. Now you went on CNN, didn't you, Michael? And you said this was like a David versus Goliath situation. Didn't you say that? Yeah. And didn't the detective Rosenberg congratulate you for your CNN appearance where you said you had Goliath on his back? You remember that? Objection sustained. Trump's defense says, Your Honor, sustained? What? May we approach on this? He says, no. Continue. So I guess we can't talk about that either. So Todd Blanche moves on. He says, all right, Mr. Cohen, you're a podcaster, aren't you? He's like, yeah, great one. And you have a podcast called Mea Culpa? He says, yeah. And what does that mean? He says, well, it's my initials, MC. My fault. Okay. He says, well, I want to play a clip of this. And so they get this clip played. And in it, Michael Cohen is there congratulating Alvin Bragg. Cohen says, Bragg's great. He's done a great job. He won this election. I've spent countless hours with Bragg. I spent countless hours with him, says Michael Cohen. He's on his podcast, right? Talking this big game. I work with him. Trump got indicted. I gave him briefings and all this thing. So you said you met Alvin Bragg, didn't you? He says, yeah, I said that. But you never met Alvin Bragg, right? Correct. Okay, cool. All right, so we want to play that for the jury now. Now, I have this other clip of your next podcast, and this is Government Defense Exhibit B25 for you. I want you to see if you recognize this. They play this clip for Cohen. He puts on the headphones. It's Michael Cohen talking. He's like, I love the sound of my own voice. This is great. I'm amazing. Then they play it for the jury. What is Cohen saying when we all hear it? Cohen's out there saying, I want to see Donald Trump in jail, just like his shirt that he wears. Mr. Cohen, says the defense, you said your work played a large role in the indictment of President Trump, didn't you? That's correct. And you responded to this truth by President Trump. So he said this and you responded to that truth. He says, well, I'm not on True Social. I think the point being that he responded on his podcast. Now, Mr. Cohen, says the defense, on April 21st, 2024, not long ago, isn't it true that you said that you were mentally excited about this trial beginning? Cohen says, yeah. And you knew that a Manhattan paralegal from Bragg's office was monitoring your social media and you still tweeted that you're mentally excited about this? He says, yeah, I did. I don't care. Now, it's also true, Michael, that you testified 7 times to Congress. Do you agree with that? He says, yeah, I think give or take. And when you were in front of Congress, you took the same oath there that you took here in this trial. Would you agree? He says, yes. And in fact, beyond testifying in Congress 7 times, you've also met with federal agents 17 times. Is that true? I have. But in some of those instances, for example, in the 2017 testimony that you provided to the U.S. House of Representatives, you'd agree with me that you lied during your testimony there? He says, that's correct. And you lied under oath. Is that correct? Yes. And you also lied to the Office of the Special Counsel, didn't you? I did. And you lied to the FBI agents who were also doing the investigation. Is that true? I did. And Mr. Cohen, you took 2 guilty pleas, didn't you? For crimes? I did. And those 2 guilty pleas, those were combined before a Judge Pauly, right? Yeah. And those were actually combined before you got ultimately sentenced and before you had to serve a penalty. Is that true? That's correct. And you pled to other crimes too. Yes, I did. And when you were going through this process, Mr. Cohen, it's true that you knew that your business partner, Gene Friedman, was cooperating with the government, right? Well, not then. I didn't know. And he was not my business partner, okay? He just leased my taxi medallions. And so I didn't know much about anything. I learned all that after the fact. Okay, but in your guilty plea, Michael, that you took on August 21st, 2018, you would agree in the statement of facts as to what you did that he is taxi operator 2. You'd agree with me that that's him, Gene Friedman, right? He says yes. Now, Michael, you explained on your direct exam, you told the jurors that you say that you were forced to plead guilty. Remember that? He says, I was. But when Judge Pauly asked you a question, he's talking about the plea process, when you go in and you take a change of plea to change your plea from not guilty to guilty, the judge asks you a whole bunch of stuff like that. Are you on drugs or alcohol? Can you read and write English? Anybody force you, threaten you, coerce you to take this plea? No. Are you doing this of your own free will and volition? Are you satisfied with the services of your attorney? Yes, I am. It's great. Everything's great. Are you sure? Because there's nothing we can do after this fact. You cannot appeal this. You cannot wake up tomorrow and are you absolutely sure? Yes, Your Honor. For the love of God, let me plead guilty. Please, for the crying out loud. Okay, fine. We'll do it. So you said that you were forced here after, even though the judge asked you and went through it, we read it, you lied to him, right? So you were forced, but when he asked you, were you forced? You told him no. I did that because that was not true. Well, what's the difference? You were forced to plead guilty guilty, but he said, did anybody force you? He says, no. So that was not true. So I did not lie. He says, well, you didn't. Well, what's the difference then? It sounds like this is weird semantics, Michael. Are you trying to redefine words? He says, well, it's just different terminology, and so I interpreted it differently, so I didn't lie to anybody. Okay, so the jury likes that. Now, you met with court staff, didn't you, Michael, for the pre-sentencing report? You don't just go in and like fill out a sticky note and plead guilty. It's kind of a big process. Hey, Cohen, he says, yeah, I met with pre-sentencing, and the pretrial services representatives was a little bit concerned that you were not accepting responsibility, right? Like you pled guilty, but they said you didn't want to accept responsibility. Is that right? Correct. And you've said the prosecution against you was the most corrupt in 100 years. Didn't you say that? Objection, says the government. They're like, ha! So all this, I think, is right. So are you saying, Michael Cohen, once they go back up, they talk to the judge. So are you coming back? You're saying Judge Pauly is or was corrupt? The judge was corrupt? Cohen says, yeah, the judge. Okay, not the DOJ? Okay. Now, the judge is dead, right? He's deceased. And I was asking this question yesterday. I'm like, ooh, what's Judge Pauly going to say once he knows that Cohen lied to him? Ooh, well, he's dead, unfortunately. Rest in peace. Yeah, he is. He's dead. And you've called the Southern District of New York prosecutors effing animals, right? Which is true. He's right about that. Again, Cohen's right. They flipped him. So now all of these statements, he can't say anymore. I have. And they got him to plead guilty. He served time and they let his wife and kids go because now he pled that candidate won, right? Remember in his statement of facts. And of course, that's Donald Trump. So they were just dominoing their way into Trump. But before that, before he buckled, he's like, yeah, these people are nuts because they are. Trump's attorney, how come that changed, Michael? Mr. Cohen, last October 24, 2023, in 60 Center Street, you said that was the Tish case where Tish took her shoes off and stunk up the whole courtroom and Areola Engeron had tassels on or whatever he was doing. But you said you lied to Judge Pauly. You admitted that. Alina Abba was saying, did you lie there or are you lying here? He said, I lied there. Yes, you admitted you lied to him, didn't you? Yes, I did. Now, going back to 2019, Mr. Cohen, you testified to Congress again, right? Yeah. And when you went in there, you were put under oath again, right? Yes. Now, on your little podcast called Mea Culpa, the cover art, is that your oath that you took? He says yes. So you believe in oaths so much that you put it on your podcast, on your cover sheet, your little logo there. It's your oath, huh? Now, when you took your guilty plea, Mr. Cohen, isn't it true that you got some credit for accepting responsibility? So the judge actually gave you a lighter sentence because you told him, I'm guilty. Your Honor, I did a bad thing. I accept responsibility. Please show me some leniency. Did you get a benefit from that, Mr. Cohen? He says, well, I don't know how Judge Pauly made his decision, so I don't know if I got an acceptance of responsibility credit, even though I lied. I don't know. In Oatesville, I met people with longer tax issues who got a year and a day. And he looks over at the jury. I got a much worse deal. And of course, the reason for that is because my guess is they had a lot more criminality that they could have hit Cohen with. They said, listen, brother, you either work with us, and this happens all the time. This is happening right now. There's some prosecutor talking to somebody right now, some defendant saying, look, you give us exactly what we want or you go to prison for 20 years. If you give us what we want, we'll give you a smoking deal. You still got to do some time. So they always say, got to go 1 year, get out early. We'll give you 3 years. You'll get out in 1. You'll do, shorter time, whatever. Happening all the time. Mr. Cohen, says the defense, does the outcome of this trial affect you personally? He says, yes, it does. Huh, interesting. Now, the medallions that you were talking about for your taxis, whose name are those in? Well, some of those are in my wife's name. I also have 16 corporations, he says. And just FYI, the A through Fs are for individuals, if you're looking at a chart. He says, okay, thanks. Cohen says, you're welcome. Now, you said you used the HELOC loan so that your wife couldn't know that you were trying to take out a loan to pay Stormy Daniels. That's what you testified. Is that right? Yeah, that's correct. Now, what did you tell your wife about the HELOC? Did you tell her anything about it? Objection! May we approach? Sidebar, maybe talking about marital privilege, spousal privilege. You can't talk about the inner operations of a marriage. Sustained, says the judge. I like your argument. They go back. Here you go, of course. Okay, Mr. Cohen, don't talk about any communications with your wife because it's all privilege. Do you know if she found out about your HELOC thing? Do you know? No, I don't know. Now, you said the HELOC was to conceal all of this from your wife, right? So you're married. You're going to do all this and even hide it from your wife? Correct. And then 2 days after Mr. Avenatti's statement, when he published what he said, isn't it true, Michael, that you deleted all of your text message? Cohen Cohen says, oh, I don't know that. I don't know if I did that. No. Did you tell people to delete your communications with them? He says, maybe I did. I don't know. Did you tell other people to delete your communications? So like he says, hey, I'm deleting my end. You delete yours. He says, I think I probably have. Okay, who? Who did you tell to delete your messages? He says, I don't know. Cohen says, like David Pecker, probably. And Darlene Stacks, did you also tell a person named Darlene to delete her messages? He says, Mr. Cohen, so it's not just one person. You tell multiple people to delete. He says, yeah. Now, you've also spoken, Mr. Cohen, about seeking a pardon from President Trump. You remember that? No, I don't remember. You said it in a deposition. Do you remember that? I don't. Wow, you don't remember a deposition. That's a pretty important thing. Well, I want to show you B80, defense exhibit. You said, Mr. Cohen, that you never asked for and would never accept a pardon from President Trump. You said you never asked for and would never accept a pardon for Trump, right? But you meant you asked your lawyers to ask, right? So you said, I never asked for and never accepted a pardon, but you were being clever. Your lawyers asked, didn't you? So you didn't ask, but your lawyers did for you. Isn't that clever? So how come you did that? He says, well, I just wanted the nightmare to be over, okay? I wanted to find out if they would be doing pre-pardons, and so my lawyers did do it. So you, Mr. Cohen, let's be clear, you had your lawyer, Mr. Costello, reach out to Mr. Giuliani to explore it, didn't you? Well, Mr. Costello was never my lawyer, but you had him reach out for you, didn't you? And you said this lie in a written statement, didn't you? Cohen says, it was confusing, I didn't know. Now, this terrible judge breaks this up right now. He says, let's break. So they take a break. The judge drains the energy out of the room. Perfect timing. Well done. They're back. Prosecutors had some time to get out of their dizzy spell from what they're witnessing here. They come back. They say, Your Honor, we want a curative instruction about when the indictment was unsealed because this is confusing to the jurors and they're confused. And he says, Todd Blanche, well, I can clean that up on cross, Your Honor. I can just get him to explain that. He says, okay, you can try, but if not, we'll have a curative instruction. And says, be aware, the jurors cannot work next Wednesday. So we'll just be back Monday, Tuesday for final witnesses and maybe summation arguments on Tuesday. And then we won't be back on Wednesday. So they want a curative instruction about timings. They say, I'll get that into the record. Otherwise, we'll get the instruction. Okay. Bring in the jury. Jury comes back in. Michael Cohen's back on the stand. Todd Blanche continues. All right, Mr. Cohen, you were meeting with the Office of Special Counsel, Robert Mueller, who is investigating Trump, right? Yeah, I was. But when you met there, the Southern District of New York prosecutors were also there, weren't they? So you met with the special counsel, who is supposed to be a special counsel, independent, separate from the DOJ. But when you met with them, the Southern District was also there. Huh. So other actual DOJ attorneys were there. So there's nothing separate at all. So you met with them all at the same time, didn't you? Yeah, I did, correct. And then when you were at Otisville, Mr. Cohen, you also started meeting with the Manhattan prosecutors, right? Yes. And you took guilty pleas, and you've been on supervised release since that time. Is that right? Yes. In fact, you've tried to get your supervised release term reduced a couple times, haven't you? Yes, I have. 3 times, in fact. Sure it's not 4? He says, maybe. Now, last October, Mr. Cohen, you said that you had cooperated, right? I did cooperate. You said you refused a 5K. I did. That was false, though, right? You refused 5K? Well, I wouldn't accept one. And so that was false. I wouldn't accept one. And Michael, when you were in Congress, you got asked a question about your desire to work in the White House. And that question was based on your December sentencing submission, wasn't it? Objection sustained. And when you were going to go over there at the White House, you were going to work under Don McGahn. Is that true? No, not Don. Do you know Spencer Zwick, Mr. Cohen? Yes, I do. He's a fundraiser for Mitt Romney. Now, he told you when you were talking to him, he said something like chief of staff, right? He said like, yeah, we'll get you to be chief of staff. He's a fundraiser for Romney. And you said that would be nice to him, didn't you? If he made you the chief of staff? Yeah, I did. I would be nice. And Mr. Cohen, did you tell Kedar Massenberg that you wanted a job in the White House? Maybe. Did you tell Keith Davidson? Did you tell him that you wanted to be and that you might be the attorney general? Did you say that to him? He says, yeah, I did. So what? You told your daughter that you wanted to be special counsel to the president, right? But Mr. Priebus from the RNC didn't like that title. Cohen says, no, I wanted to be the personal attorney, not special counsel. Now, was your daughter mad that Gary Cohn got a White House role and you didn't get one? Yeah, she was. My daughter was mad. Mr. Cohen, you were friends with Pastor Darrell Scott all the way back to 2011, right? And there was talk about President Trump running in 2012. Is that true? I don't remember. That was long ago. And then on National Prayer Day, did you express frustration at not being invited to the prayer day? Mr. Cohen, you said you applied for early termination of your probation, right? Yeah. Did your most recent application for early termination include fake cases? that we've covered here because he used Google Bard to create these fake cases that any person could look at and say, those look fake. Prosecutor, objection! Overruled, says the judge. You can ask about that. Michael Cohen says, well, yeah, I used Google Bard, which is an AI, and I searched for early termination. And we had the 8th Circuit results, but there were just phantom results. And so the substance was fine, but the citations were wrong. You mean what the citations were wrong as though like they didn't exist, right? They were just completely made up. He says, yeah, they weren't real. Now, Mr. Cohen, I want to go back to this October 24th, 2016 phone call to Keith Schiller. This is the big phone call. Cohen's calling Schiller, and they're now, according to Cohen, coordinating the Stormy case. This is the moment. So when you called him, this is not that long ago, Mr. Cohen, you remember everything else. When you called Keith Schiller, who worked with Trump, did he hand his phone to President Trump, or did he put you on the speakerphone? Which one? I don't remember. And you didn't talk about this call when you testified to the grand jury, did you? I don't recall. But in March 2023, when you were talking to Manhattan, you didn't mention this case, did you? No, they refreshed my memory at that time. Your Honor, may we approach? During a sidebar, Cohen is handed another cup of liquid, presumably water, but we don't know. Trump's attorney says, do you remember, Mr. Cohen, that you were getting harassing calls from October 2016 in October 2016? Remember that? No. On October 24th at 7 p.m., you don't remember that they forgot to block their phone number when they called you? No. Well, if the number ended in 0594, you texted that number and you said that you'd given the number to Secret Service. Do you remember that? Oh, yes, I do. I did remember that. I found out that they were 14 years old. Punk kids? Prank callers? Todd Blanche says, okay. So you do remember now all of a sudden. Okay, interesting. So you now know the details. They're 14. You said you just didn't remember, but now we know. Okay. So then at 7:48 p.m., isn't it true, Mr. Cohen, that you texted Keith Schiller about the 14-year-old? He says, yes, I did. They showed the document on the screen. 10/24/2016 voicemail and a call, 801-802. It's right there on the screen. Keith Schiller's screenshot. Now, Mr. Cohen, you claimed that this was a phone call about Stormy Daniels, right? Now, I want to show you this, and we're going to show this to the jury, but I don't want to show this to the courtroom. Now, you claim this call was about Stormy Daniels, right? Yes, sir, it was. So I want to show this to the jury, but not the courtroom. They do that. There's phone numbers on it. Todd says, okay, fine. There's no number. Don't show it to the courtroom then. Nobody can see it. You see that, Mr. Cohen? Yeah. You recognize it? Yeah. So you would agree with me. At 8:14 p.m., you texted Keith Schiller the number that had been harassing you. You said, here they are again. These punk kids keep calling me. Yes, I did. Oh, so you lied about this then. You said you don't remember the harassing phone calls. Now you claim that in the 1 minute and 36-second call, you spoke about the harasser and Stormy Daniels? Huh. Well, it could have been both calls. It could have been. That's not what you said on Tuesday. You said this call was only about Stormy Daniels. Now we know it's a 1 minute and 36 phone call, and you talked about both things, about this harassing 14-year-old and Stormy in a minute? I could have. Michael, you are lying. You are lying right now. Michael Cohen he sounds a little bit perturbed. He says, well, based on the records, I think I spoke about both. We're not asking about your belief, Michael. This jury doesn't want to hear about what you think happened. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained. The People's Chart omitted your texts with Keith Schiller. They put a chart up on the screen here. They showed all this text messages, but they didn't put up the text messages that we just showed you. And so you here now are telling me, knowing all of this, that you claim you were telling the truth on Tuesday. He says, well, I thought I was based on the documents. So you testified off the documents the people gave you and not your own memory? Huh. Judge calls another break. Of course. Perfect time. So Cohen's getting skewered on there. Oh, so you're just like a little parrot. Whatever they put up on the screen, you just say. Now, when we show you the other side, you go, I have no explanation for that. Why? So you're just reading the script. You can't remember anything. The judge is like, crap, cut it. Break. Anyone have to pee? Perfect. I do. Let's go. So they take their break. Again, cutting off the energy. Cohen's getting obliterated. You can feel it. He says, well, it could have been. It's brutal. So that's when he said he called and talked to Keith about Stormy Daniels. No, he was talking about some punk kid harassing him. Brutal. Could have been both calls in a minute and 30 seconds. Really. And when the people put up all the texts on the screen, they omitted those texts, and you didn't mention it because you're a liar, aren't you? They're back from their break. Trump's attorney, Todd Blanche. Hey, thanks, Judge, for killing the momentum again. It's like in the middle of a sporting event. If one side is just crushing the other side, what does the other side do? They call it time came out. The judge just did it for them. We're back. Trump's attorney, he's done it twice this morning. Todd Blanche says, Your Honor, we have a draft curative instruction on the timing of the unsealing of the indictment, but it was my intention to rehabilitate the question right now out of the box. Judge says, well, let me see it. No, Your Honor, this is something that should be cleaned up, not something that he should clean up. The court should do it. Defense says, Your Honor, the text made clear that the indictment was leaked. The detective said that they told the New York Times before they told you. So they're trying to talk about when the indictment was unsealed. The government wants it to be the official unsealing. Todd Blanche wants to say we knew about it way before that because the New York Times knew about it. So the prosecution wants them to come out and say, well, it was officially unsealed on this day. So when the jury's reconstructing the timeline, it'll look like Cohen didn't have any forewarning about this, which I don't think he did. So Merchan says, I'm also informed that one of the jurors say they have an appointment next Thursday at 1:30. I'd like to take it up with the juror at the break in the robing room, one lawyer for each side. And so get the witness. We'll see if they can skip that or not. Cohen retakes the stand, bring him back in. Jury comes in, they enter. Todd Blanche for the defense says, Mr. Cohen, I want to be very clear about this. You do not have any evidence that anyone at the Manhattan DA's office leaked this indictment, do you? I don't. But you know that this was unsealed on March 30th, right? Yes. Please approach. They're back up at the bench. They come back. And when you went on TV, Mr. Cohen, the knowledge of the indictment was public, wasn't it? Yes, it was. Todd says, I want to put up the redacted exhibit so the jurors can see this. One of which says, I'm 14. Little kid, I'm 14. How's this work? Cohen's, having a meltdown over it. Puts it up on the screen. Mr. Cohen, in 2011, you arranged for an article about how well Mr. Trump was polling, didn't you? Yes. And you also arranged an article about yourself, didn't you? Yes. And how did you do this? He says, well, I know reporters and I pitch them when I go and take these stories. So you have like a Rolodex of reporters, like a contact list? He says, yeah. Now, you never responded to these projects without checking with President Trump, did you? Well, once I had his answer, if he said yes, I might reuse that answer. Michael, in May 2011, Mr. Trump decided not to run for president, right? Yeah. And later that year, you worked with Keith Davidson to get the Dirty taken down, another online article factory. Haven't you told law enforcement that Mr. Trump's first statement was that his family would not like the Stormy Daniels story on this Dirty very much, right? So you said to law enforcement, they're having that recorded down in their interview notes, that Trump doesn't want his family hearing about Stormy. So it's not about the election at all. You told law enforcement that. Yes. And it's also true that you recorded reporters a lot. You'd agree, Mr. Cohen? He says, I don't know, probably 40 times or so. When did you stop recording reporters? He says, after the 2016 election, I'd say. And you didn't record in 2017 or 2018? Didn't record anyone? He says, well, I don't know. I'd have to check. Well, we'll check together. Let's do it together, Mr. Cohen. Glad you're here. Did you share a recording with Miss Haberman of another person? I don't know. Did you sometimes record people without telling them? He says, well, it's not illegal in New York, so I'm allowed to do that. He says, that's not what I asked. I said, look at this list. Who else did you record, Mr. Cohen? He says, oh gosh, Cohen, he's going through the list. Jeff Zucker recorded him. Mr. Trump recorded him. That reporter recorded him. You know it's unethical for a lawyer to record his client, right? He says, well, there is the crime fraud exception, which is wild, when the lawyer is the one helping you allegedly commit the crime. He's like, well, there's a crime fraud exception I can record. I'm the criminal. So you say it's a crime, and the crime fraud exception applies to a conversation that you said you made only so you could give it to Mr. Pecker to show Mr. Pecker that Trump was going to pay him. How is that a crime? He says, well, I don't know that that's a crime. I was just giving an example of how it could be a crime, but he's totally twisted up. So I guess there is no crime fraud exception. I was recording it to give it to Pecker, and that's not a crime. It's like all twisted up. So the doorman story, Mr. Cohen, as well. Mr. Trump did not want it getting out, even though that story was false, right? He says, yes, sir, exactly. And you didn't tell Trump about the liquidation clause in the contract, did you? I did not. You also testified about a June 16, 2016 phone call. You said on the stand, Mr. Cohen, that there was a call at 6:51 p.m. to President Trump through Keith Schiller. You said that that call happened, but you also say you were receiving and making thousands of phone calls. So can you explain? He says, well, these were important calls. I've been taking calls and talking about them for 6 years. Now, do you have a specific recollection of this very special phone call since you've made so many of them? He says, well, based on the documents I've been shown, I have a memory, not based on my own memory. Oh, great. Now that day, Michael, on June 16th, just before, you also called Chris Cuomo. Do you remember that before you called Keith Schiller? You said there was a call through Keith Schiller to Trump. You remember that phone call? He says, yes. And when you were recording President Trump, you say it stopped recording because you got and answered a call. Remember that testimony? He says, yeah, I did. I got a call from Capital One Bank. Do you remember what that call was about, Michael? No, I might have been about identity theft, something, maybe the second time, whatever. Judge takes the afternoon break. We fast forward. We're back. Mercan says, all right, we spoke with the alternate in the robing room, and have you discussed it with your colleagues? Prosecutor says, we have, Your Honor, and we should tell the jurors that they'll stop next Thursday at 1 if we've reached the point where we can release the alternate. Judge says, okay, they make their decision. Michael Cohen's back on the stand. Todd Blanche continues, Mr. Cohen, you'd agree with me that this NDA, waving it around, you'd agree it's a perfectly legal contract, isn't it? It is. And you'd say that Donald Trump never signed it, right? Right. He never signed the side letter either, did he? He did not. And in this contract, there's names like David Dennison and Peggy Peterson, aren't there? Yeah. Who made up those names? David Dennison and Peggy Peterson. Where'd those come from? He says, well, Keith Davidson knew someone named Dennison, and I don't know how Peggy was picked or something, but, well, okay. Well, you were a lawyer at the Trump Organization, weren't you? Prosecutor, Your Honor, may we approach? Sidebar. They're back. Blanche continues. Mr. Cohen, you worked for The Apprentice for the Trump Organization, didn't you? I think it was for Mr. Trump personally, but something like that. And you did legal work for Don Jr. too, didn't you? Yes. And you never had a retainer agreement with him? I did not. Now, I want to put 202 in evidence, and this is an FEC statement. It's a statement from Michael Cohen. He says, just because something isn't true doesn't mean it can't cause you harm or damage. Do you remember when you told reporters this was true? I did. And you recorded yourself? Yes, I did. And the judge says, why don't we stop here? This is a good time to call it a day. Woo! So the jurors leave. Now, Trump's attorney, Emile Beauvais, says after Cohen is stepping down and finishing testimony, we've still got other business to attend to. Trump's attorney, Emile Beauvais, says, Your Honor, our expert, Mr. Smith, is going to come and testify about campaign contributions, or was, but now the arguments are different. And we have the draft jury instructions in, and we know now what you're going to tell the jurors their rules are, so we might have to change this. The judge says, well, I have not approved anything, so we don't actually know what the draft jury instructions are. He says, well, we'd address the definitions in your instructions. There's a case of Congressman Jim Moran. We don't want to tread on this court's instruction. This testimony could come in on Monday. And the government says, no way, Your Honor. 95% of what this expert would come in and testify would run afoul of Your Honor's rulings, and so they should not be allowed to testify. Judge says, yeah, I previously ruled that Smith may not testify as a lay fact witness, only generally on the FEC. I'll read both submissions this weekend, but until you hear differently, my ruling is not changed. So he can only come in on a very limited, very general basis, and he'll basically be useless because I'll have him neutered. Now, when it comes to scheduling, says the judge, I want to avoid big breaks. So maybe we can start early and work late, but we're not going to be here on Wednesday, unfortunately. So how much more of Mr. Cohen do we have? Todd Blanche says, Your Honor, I'll be done with cross before the morning break on Monday. Government says we'll have no more witnesses there, and that's going to be it. Trump's attorney says, Your Honor, we could finish witnesses on Monday, and that's not considering Mr. Trump. So as of the close of court today, does not sound like Mr. Costello is on the list. So they'll be done and out on Monday. The judge says, okay, we'll have the pre-charge conference on Monday. Be ready for summations, closing arguments on Tuesday. We are now adjourned. Cohen had a rough day on there, and this was another part of the exchange from Klasfeld. He said that there was even a conversation about extortion, where Cohen was saying, as part of the other testimony, where they say, Cohen says the tape got cut off because a call record, he was in the middle of a call came in when he was in the middle of the recording. You sure about that? Yeah, we're positive. Now, Blanche comes back in and asks whether Cohen ever expressed the view that Keith Davidson was extorting Trump. Objection. Overruled. Cohen says, yeah, I once opined they were extorting Mr. Trump, and how long he's been working for them and all the things. No retainer agreement. So just a devastating day. Michael Cohen caught in so many traps that the jurors have got to just be totally disgusted by his never-ending lies. Our friend Charlie Kirk got this clip for us. Donald Trump came out, had a little bit to say after the day's testimony. We'll listen to some of this and then round it out.
Well, thank you very much. I think it was a very interesting day. It was a fascinating day, and it shows what a scam this whole thing is. And I think that seems to be the way almost everybody, even CNN and MSDNC, they have quotes over here that drop the trial. Ellie Honig, this is a statement he just made, would not have even charged this case.
Yeah, nobody else did. Even Bragg didn't want to do it.
Against me. Nicholas Chambers, lawyer, Newsmax, there's no law against securing a non-disclosure agreement. There's none. Everybody has them. Every company has them. Out of concern for your marriage or protecting your family or any other reason, they're common. Non-disclosure, NDAs. The Manhattan show trial against President Trump is a gross abuse of power. It's a disgusting spectacle, he says. And it should terrify all of us, and that's true.
That is true. Absolutely true. The president explaining some of the major problems that everybody everybody can see except apparently Alvin Bragg and the Democrats. So case continues to collapse. That's what happens when you bring out a liar, and a lot of people are starting to realize it, even people on CNN, which we'll talk about in the next segment. And so, my friends, I want to thank you for joining us as we covered this day's testimony. Of course, we're going to continue to cover it. So thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking this video. Thank you for inviting a friend or family member to come on over here and join us when we cover these trials and more. We'd love to see them. We'd love for you to check out some links in our description below. We have watchingthewatchers.locals.com, our members only community. You can join on YouTube as well. We do extra streams usually in the mornings. We missed today because we were at an event, but we still posted updates. And so we love our membos. Come join us, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We'll see you over there and back here on the next one.